Hey, it's Chantel from William Woodwright here, and today I'm going to try out an Opal Inlay project on this stainless steel ring core with a 4mm inlay groove. I'll be inlaying the ring with this 2mm opal in Moon Yellow, which is a really pretty aqua color with some yellow flashes. And I'll be adding some glow-in-the-dark mica powder for this project in the color dark teal. In daylight, it looks pretty much white, but when you hit it with some light, in the dark it glows this cool teal color, which matches nicely with the opal I'm using. I'm going to try tinting the glow-in-the-dark powder with some colored mica powder to get it to match the aqua color of my opal pieces, so that in the daylight it'll have some color to it. So I've got an empty jar here to mix in, and I'm starting with a base of glow powder. I'm going with Luster Blue and Flash Jade, and I'll slowly add pigment until I get the color I want. I'm just adding a tiny bit at a time here. You can always add more, but you can't take any of it back out. Then I'll close up the jar and give it a little shake to mix it together and see what I get. Comparing that color to the opal, I think it needs a bit more green. So I'll just slowly keep adding pigment, small amounts at a time to tweak the color. Okay, that's pretty close. I'm adding a little more glow powder here to lighten the pigment up, because once I hit the mica powder with CA glue to start the inlay process, it's actually going to darken the color. To get a better idea of what it'll look like on the ring, I'm mixing it with a little drop of water, and as you can see, it does get quite a bit darker. I'm adding a little more glow powder to lighten it up just a bit more, and this is also going to add to that glow effect. Another quick test with water here to see what I've got. I think it's looking like a good match. So I'm going to take this powder, the opal, and the ring core over to the lathe and start inlaying. I like to start my inlay process right on the lathe using an expanding ring mandrel, which expands to hug the inside of the ring core and holds it tightly in place. Before laying anything down, I'm wiping the core down with a bit of acetone. This helps remove any oils, dust, or debris that may be on the core. I start by applying a thin layer of medium CA glue all the way around the ring. I'll be sprinkling the mica powder on top of this layer of glue, so I like to use a medium viscosity instead of a watery thin so that it doesn't drip off the ring as I'm applying it. I'll be using thin CA later to seal everything in. Now that I've got the core fully coated, I can start going in with my mica powder. I'm using this handy little inlay tool to scoop up the powder and sprinkle it on. I'm trying to get an even layer here and trying not to build it up too thick because I want to leave room to inlay the opal on top. I changed my technique with this powder later on. I found I have a lot more control by just tapping the tool with my finger and letting it sprinkle down little bits at a time as opposed to dumping it off the scoop. Once the core is coated, I'm using extra thin CA glue to seal it in. This is a super watery thin viscosity that really soaks into the powder, instead of sitting on top like a medium glue would do. I used too much here. As you can see, it started to drip down and cause the powder to run. A little bit definitely goes a long way. I don't want to use accelerator at this point because too much accelerator can cause the glue to go cloudy. Instead, I'm turning the lathe on at the very lowest speed so that the glue can air dry a bit without dripping off. Now that it's stopped running, I'm using the other end of my inlay tool to remove some of the excess that's built up along the walls of the ring. I want to take this down a bit so I've got enough room to lay opal all the way to the edges. This wouldn't have been necessary if I had used the glue more sparingly, so lesson learned for next time. Once the glue is cured up a bit more, I'm going back in with my mica powder to cover up those thinner spots. And sealing that powder in once again with a very small amount of extra thin CA. You can see even just one drop goes a long way. Then I've got the lathe spinning on low again for a few minutes till it sets up a bit. Now that everything's staying in place, I'm going in with the crushed opal pieces. I'm sprinkling them in straight from the jar at this point. I've got a clear Tupperware lid on the lathe bed to catch anything that falls down so I don't lose any opal. I use a combination of tools to set the opal in place. This little tool is actually a dental pick, which is great for nudging these tiny pieces as long as I don't get any glue stuck to it. This is the flat end of my inlay tool, which I like to use to pack the opal in and push them down into the layer of glue. I'm inlaying in sections here. So once I've got some opal laid down, I'm adding a few drops of thin CA to set it in place. Then I can rotate the ring and start in the next section without any opal falling out. Okay, now that the groove is completely filled with opal, I'm doing one more pass around the whole ring with extra thin CA. Then, to fill in any small gaps, I'm sprinkling a little more mica powder all the way around. once again sealing it all in with extra thin CA. I'll let it spin on low for a few minutes to air dry a bit. After about 5 minutes, I'll spray with a very small amount of CA accelerator to help it cure up. I'm spraying a very fine mist, held from about 10 inches above the ring so that it distributes nice and evenly. Once everything is totally cured, I can start turning the inlay down to the ring core. I'm using a square carbide cutter to turn the ring down. While the glue was curing, I sharpened this cutter with a diamond stone and lapping fluid so that I had a super sharp tool for cutting into this opal. After turning everything down level with the walls of the ring, I'll go back in with my square cutter at about a 45-degree angle, using that point to remove a very small amount of material so that I've got a bit of a channel for my CA finish to sit in. This step was done off camera because my camera battery unfortunately died at this point. But if you look closely, you can see here how the inlay is now turned just a little bit below the walls of the ring. Then I'm going in with an Abranet mesh sanding sheet to try to take any remaining high spots down by hand. This will also help remove some glue from the metal core. I noticed I was getting some color transfer from the metal, which darkened the color of the inlay a bit, so I started sanding with just the folded edge of my sheet, working from the inside out. Before starting wet sanding, I blasted the ring with some compressed air to remove any bits of dust that tend to collect in tiny holes after dry sanding. Then it's on to wet sanding. I'm using a set of micro mesh sanding pads, which range from 1500 to 12,000 grit. I'm wet sanding before applying my finishing layer of CA to get the exposed opal pieces as smooth and polished as possible. I find the more polished the opal is, the more you can see that iridescent effect that it has. After working through all those grits, I wipe any excess slurry off the ring and start applying my CA finish. I'm using medium CA here because I want to fill in that shallow channel I created in the ring core. letting that spin again on the lowest speed for a few minutes. Once it's air dried a little bit, I speed the lathe up and spray a few small mists of accelerator. When that's fully cured, I'm going back in again with my square carbide cutter to bring down the glue even with the ring pour. I'm trying to remove little bits at a time here so I don't overdo it and take off too much. Next, I'm working on removing the glue that's built up on the metal on the exposed edges of the ring. To do this, I butt the cutter up at 90 degrees against the metal and turn the lathe by hand to scrape off the glue. Going slow and being careful not to scratch the inlay section. I noticed I've still got a bit of a high spot of glue on one section of the ring, so I'm using a strip of sandpaper and wet sanding, targeting just that section to bring it down even with the rest of the ring. Once everything is even, I'm going through all my micro mesh pads again and wet sanding the CA finish. So this is what it looks like, polished up to 12,000 grit. I'm finishing this off with hot ultra gloss plastic polish. It buffs and cleans everything up and also helps to bring the stainless steel to a nice shine. And this is the final product. This was a really fun project. I love how the ring turned out. I think the mica powder I mixed ended up matching really well with the color of the opal. And here's the best part. Even in the dark, it matches with that teal glow in the dark powder. Thank you so much for watching my process. I hope you learned something new. I definitely did. Don't forget to like and subscribe to stay up to date with more content from William Woodwright.